It's wonderful that you're all here, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about where we are just to locate ourselves before we have this amazing poetry reading that we have lined up for you, a banquet actually. Um, the first time we had a poetry reading here, this is a magnificent old building with a great history, which has been used as the governor's palace for since 1961, but it's several hundred years old in different forms. It occupies even now a 100-acre site of great ecological significance. It's a living ecosystem of very high value which sustains all kinds of species. A few minutes earlier, actually a while earlier, I had the pleasure of standing with Benel Antau, who is a wildlife rescuer of international repute. He has a wonderful television show you must all watch on National Geographic about animal rescues in Goa. But we were watching a spectacular pair of white-bellied sea eagles floating right above us here. So it's one of the absolutely amazing sighting. At various times, there's an old church attached here, which also contains the genesis of the name Donna Paula. There's a Donna Paula who's buried in there. There's an old church here where many of us gather. My family, which lives down the road, gather here on Sundays for Mass. So it is a historic site. The backdrop is historic. But in many ways, what the great drama, the great story is actually behind us. What you see here is actually the mother. It's a very moving place. This is a sacred place for me in many ways because this is the birth of our entire civilization is here. This is the bay in a way of the Made, the great Made River. On the left there you have the Zuari. On the right here you have the Mandovi, and they meet at the back of the island called Tiswadi. And as old as human history is, some of you have heard me say this, but I urge you to ask me for the references and I'll provide them. As old as human history has been written, this place, this island of Tiswadi has shown up. Of course, you have nearby, as with the rest of the Konkan, you have Paleolithic, Mesolithic carvings, which show that human history, what you would call modern man's long trajectory has begun here as well. But also, from the Sumerians, the Etruscans, the Romans, certainly into the contemporary period, this island has been well known. It's always been known as an entrepôt, great trading port. 1,000 years ago, it was the Kadambas. And of course, then the great drama that remade the entire world, which is the coming of the West to India, takes place here, right on this very river. This was the global superhighway of the 16th century. The city just up the river here was the largest and most rich trading port in the history of humankind. At that point, it was twice the size of Paris. It was twice the size of London. Much of the world as we know it today was made out here. Prior to that, it was a Persianate cosmopolis for 1,000 years. Many, many peoples, for instance, the Croatians were here in force before the coming of the Western colonialists and then remained after. There's a tremendous history here.
Right.
You are all writers, but one thing you may not know is that one of the world's greatest works of literature was written in that building behind you. Right behind you now, in what is kind of a tourism venue, a staging venue for different kinds of events, is the Aguada jail. Many, many people, of course, from our history were imprisoned there. It's the site of many revered freedom fighters. Members of my own family were interred there. But in the 16th century, here's a different man who was there. This is a 16th century picture. And it's of a man who writes one of the world's greatest works of literature. And this is a contemporary painting discovered by Landeg White, who was the great translator of Camões. And so Camões, he writes the story of the Portuguese becoming great, which is the story of the Portuguese coming to India. But Camões, like many of the poets we have met here, who you'll be hearing from today, was something of a controversial figure. He got himself into trouble. Aku, you will relate. He got himself into trouble a lot in his own lifetime. In fact, he fled to India only because he got himself into trouble. And over here in this building, he wrote the Lusiads. And the best way to understand Camões is to understand, you should read this book. It's called Camões Made in Goa by the great translator Landeg White. And it explains how he became such a great artist in conjunction here with his experiences here in India. So today we have a lineup of poets, but first, a twist. We are going to start with my friend Vasudendra, a reading from my friend Vasudendra's book. And Vasudendra, who has written a contemporary Indian classic of short stories called Mohana Swami, I highly urge you to get it. It's one of my favorite books. Has also written an epic novel in Kannada. It's an absolutely fine book. You're going to have a discussion about it tomorrow. And it tracks from Lisboa to Goa to Vijayanagara, which is equally connected in the 16th century and is called Tejo Tunga Bhadra. And part of the apex parts of some of the part of his novel take place right here. Vasudendra, please.